Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our mini lecture, Soup for the Soul, and we have a special guest today. But those of you who are new and just tuning in for the first time, we welcome you. My name's Nora Dashley. I'm with the Greater Cincinnati YMCA. And of course, we partnered with the Colerain Township Community Senior Center, oh my gosh, about 8 years ago. So we have a wonderful partnership with them. And my good friend Sylvia from Visiting Angels, Cincinnati West, we decided to put the mini lectures in because it's great resources for our members. So we have Mr. Chris Byler with Oasis Senior Advisor, and I just, called him and said, hey, how about providing, a 30-minute mini lecture to our members? And his idea was elder fraud. And we have Miss Molly Pruce. Yes. She's a gerontologist, and she's going to speak a little bit about elder fraud. But I want to give a quick introduction. And Chris, go ahead and tell everybody what you do for Oasis, because we just partnered with Oasis 2 years ago. I met you during the pandemic, yeah. So it's a great resource for you. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Chris. I'm with Oasis Senior Advisors, and we provide a free service for seniors and their families for that next question of what, and maybe you're in transition and you're needing additional care, whether it's in the house or maybe you might need to make a move. A really good example, I was with someone yesterday, they asked me what my why was. Why do I do this, and why do we do it? And I remember when I was first looking back at several different businesses, this was not my industry, but I reached out to my brother, who is a hospice chaplain, and he drew a scenario where he said, Chris, picture this. He said, I walk into a room all the time where the family just realized, or just their mom just received a terminal diagnosis, whether it's 3 months, a year. He's like, picture that atmosphere, right? And that body language, that stress. And he said, if they ask me the question of what's next, he said, I hand them a packet that's an inch thick. He's about 60 nursing homes, 100 senior living communities, all these home care companies. And he said, when I hand that packet over, he said, their emotion and their stress level drops harder than finding out the information about their mom and the terminal diagnosis. And he said, it's like, if I could put a business card on top of that packet and say, hey, look, here's my wife's name is Shauna. Here's Chris and Shauna's business card. They're a physical embodiment of that packet. They can sit down with you, talk with you about all these options, and narrow those options down to 2 or 3. Just based on everything that's going on, your finances, your health concerns, what you're looking at, whether it's staying at home or whatever it is. That's when we saw that how we could just not provide just a service, but how we can truly serve a family in a time of need. But that's kind of a good picture of what Oasis Senior Advisors does.
And that's great information, because when my father was living 3 years ago, same thing happened. He gave me this packet. He said they gave him a packet on what to do next. He gave it to me, but fortunately I knew what to do. But there's a lot of members, or I should say community residents, that don't know what to do. So it's nice to see that we have resources such as yours that are able to help the families. So we thank you for it. It is very nice. So thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having us and allow me to sponsor today.
Yeah, so in the future we will have a mini lecture with Chris coming on and sharing us a little bit more about what his organization does. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. So welcome back, Sylvia Dwortman from Visiting Angels Cincinnati West, and of course she's my partner in crime.
That's right.
Yeah. So we have about 20-25 minutes with you, and we have Miss Molly Pruce. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing it, because we just met 20 minutes ago.
Right.
So I think it's great that, one, we're having the topic elder fraud.
Yeah.
Lots to learn here in a short amount of time, but we would like for you to come back in the future to provide another series.
Sure. So hi, I'm Molly Pruce. I'm a gerontologist. I have been in the field about 20 years. I came about it much in a way as a lot of you did, through personal experience. I was a long distance caregiver for my mother, really had to try to navigate time and space distance, but also navigate a very complex and fragmented system of support for our elders. And it really inspired me to get my master's in gerontology and start a business to really educate people on the issues impacting older adults today, along with their caregivers. And so I love what I do. I work with companies who have employees who are caregiving. I work with centers and organizations who deal directly with older adults. But it's really wonderful to be here to be able to share my knowledge of elder fraud with all of you.
And let's classify. Let's make something. Let's clarify this. So age is just a number.
Yeah.
So when we say older adults, we're not talking, the 90, 100-year-olds. We're talking anybody really of the age 50, 55 and up. That's the age demographic that we're targeting.
Right.
So tell everybody, share with us, what exactly is elder fraud?
So elder fraud, I'm going to read a definition the law enforcement authorities have come up with, just to kind of clarify. And it's an act targeting older adults, so anybody 55 and older, where attempts are made to deceive either through promises of goods, services, or financial benefits that don't really exist, were never intended to be provided, and were misrepresented. So that is a big, we can unpack that a little bit. So it's a promises of something like goods or services or financial gain that actually don't exist or were never intended to exist.
And that is so prevalent now with social media and texting and phone calls. And I know I've heard of many instances where people have been scammed or they almost were scammed. And I personally was almost scammed once. So, I can get how easy it is to kind of fall prey to that. So what exactly is financial exploitation?
So financial exploitation is a form of fraud, but it's the use of another person's assets without their consent, under false pretenses, undue influence, or through coercion or manipulation. So it's more about somebody's financial assets, so real estate, cars, bank accounts, things like that, that are taken without someone's knowledge or through manipulation of somebody's emotions.
So I just heard that the new scam out there, you might have heard this, I just heard this yesterday, is when you are unfortunately burying someone, you're at a funeral, and the latest scam, you probably heard this already, you get a phone call saying, hey, Mr. So-and-so, the payment for this is due, would you like to pay for this over the phone? This is after the services are done. So I heard this is a big scam going on right now.
It certainly is. Any kind of announcements that are made in the paper, such as death notices, will trigger some fraudster to, go ahead. They now have somebody's name, they have their relatives' names, and they can easily manipulate someone. And that's, it's very difficult because people are grieving, and so they're very sensitive and they're very honorable with their loved ones' estate. So they want to make sure that all the debts, quote unquote, are paid, so that it can be an opportunity ripe for fraud.
So what are some of the common tactics that the criminals use for this?
So, there are several. They establish camaraderie, right? They say they're your friend, or they're a colleague of yours, and so they kind of manipulate people by sort of the buddy-buddy system. They play on our aversion to loss, like in the case of a funeral. They know that people are grieving, and so they take advantage of that, as sick and as sad as that may be. They'll use flattery, right? So they'll be like, oh, we know you're so smart about investments, so let us show you this really, really wonderful investment that you can make a lot of money really quick. Or they'll make us feel anxious, right? They'll make us feel like if we don't act right now, something bad is going to happen. We'll go to jail, we'll get tax liens, we'll get all kinds of things. So they use that. They create instant terror, right? There's a scam we'll talk about that has to do with grandparents. And so they'll make us feel, that someone that we love is in danger and that we have to act now. There's the romance. So people, will befriend you and romance you, wine and dine you, and then, they can take advantage of that. Or they'll use outright intimidation. They may show up physically at your door. They may call you and threaten you with something bad. So there's all kinds of terrible tactics that fraudsters are using to really get into the accounts of older adults.
It just really scared me when you said they physically show up. Now, I've not known anybody, thank God, that's physically shown up, but I've known people who've lost thousands of dollars by being the romance thing of it online. And it just breaks my heart that there are people out there that are that lonely that fall prey to this online romance scam where they're really people in Nigeria just scamming them for their money.
Right.
And everybody has a sixth sense. Follow that. If you have questions or anything about someone calling you or texting you or, emailing you, specifically showing up at your doorstep, that's a red flag. Pay attention to all those red flags out there.
Anytime they ask for a credit card, that's a super duper red flag right there. That or your social security number or access to your bank account. That's all red flags.
Yes. And I actually was involved in a case years ago where an older man, he was in his 90s, had befriended this younger man in his 40s. And they were just buddies at the gym. This older man was going to the gym every day and they got to be friends. And what happened was it started with, hey, I need some money to, fix my car. So he'd give him a few $100s to fix his car. He'd, need some help with his rent, on and on in this couple-year relationship, to the point where when the older man started to get a little, not wanting to give him money, he would show up at the door. And then he said he felt physically, that he couldn't refuse him. So he ended up calling the police, but unfortunately, $90,000 later.
Wow.
And this law enforcement officer that I spoke to told me that they kind of knew this gentleman was operating, but they never had any proof until, unfortunately, this case evolved, and they weren't able to recover that money because it was gone. And he was using it for drugs. So that, and gambling and other things that aren't good. So
And
that
it-
is, it's sad, but it happens.
And you feel violated, and I'm sure there's support groups out there for those that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and elder fraud, unfortunately, is under reported because people do feel embarrassed, but don't. It happens to everybody, regardless of their age, regardless of their income, regardless of their education. It is something that is so easy to become a target. I mean, we've all probably had the emails and the things that if we weren't looking closely, we could easily find ourselves. So don't ever be embarrassed if you ever find yourself a victim of fraud.
And that brings me to the one with, I think probably most all of us have an email account, and I've noticed recently that I've been getting emails saying your package is coming, click here. Here's your invoice for something, click here. Well, I do not click, I delete right away, and I block that email address because I keep track of what it is that I'm ordering and what it is and how I paid, and everything that I pay online, I will never ever get an invoice, and I don't need to click here to look at an invoice because you're inviting scammers into your email and malware and viruses and access to your systems. And in addition to that, as much as we hate to do it, we really have to change our passwords. Often. It's a pain, I know, and I don't like to do it any more than anybody else. But I've finally gotten into the habit of making a really, really long password, because if they're going to get into my account, they're going to have to work really hard to figure it out.
Yeah.
And that's why they tell you to make a really long password. Don't make something so simple.
Right.
So
far, before we continue, pay attention to the red flags.
Right.
Change your passwords often,
Right.
and do not click on any links, even if it's a survey. Do not click on any links.
Right. You can always pick up the phone and call to verify if it's a company that you're getting the email supposedly through. Always make sure you do checking into it.
And that leads us into the next question. Phishing. What is exactly phishing? Not the phishing where you have a fishing pole. Phishing. P-H-Y-I-S-H-I-N-G.
Yeah, it's phishing. So it is a form of, phishing, F-I-S-H-I-N-G, where people use email, they might use text messages to connect with somebody in order to obtain their personal information. So, for instance, I had an email come in about 3 months ago from Best Buy that said I was part of their Geek Squad membership, and that the membership was due for renewal, and that I needed to click on the link to renew the membership. And I thought, I don't remember, I didn't sign up for it, but I thought, well, maybe my husband did. So of course I called him to ask him if he had, and he said no. But it looked as official as could be. I've gotten text messages like you mentioned, where they say your delivery's about to, come in, click on this to, track it or whatnot, and I'm not expecting a delivery. So those types of activities are what they call phishing. And there's all kinds of layers of phishing, where they'll try to contact you, get you to do one thing, and then they've got you on the hook, and then they come in with some other options or other things to get out of it. I mean, it's really complicated, but it's like casting a net to collect your personal information.
And speaking of personal information, and it's like this with the grandparents, and I'm sure you've all heard the scam where you get a phone call from somebody saying your granddaughter or your grandson is in the jail and they need money immediately to get out, or they're in danger. And I had heard it, and it's sad because you're sitting there thinking, oh, my granddaughter, she needs me, and obviously your first thing you want to do is to help. And unfortunately, people have been scammed out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. But what you need to remember is, if you need to talk with your grandchildren and say, we need to have a passcode.
That's great.
So if anything really truly does happen, you need to be able for them to tell me the passcode so that you have that. Because if you say, okay, I'm willing to help you, but what's my passcode? And if they can't say that, then you know it's a scam immediately. Because if your granddaughter or grandson is really there and they're being threatened, then they're going to go, what's your passcode? And then they'll be able to give it to you. So that's like the first tip that I can tell you is suggest you have a passcode with family members, that if someone is going to call and tell you and scare the bejeebers out of you, say, what's my passcode? And have a passcode.
That's a great idea. We did it with our kids when they were little. We said, if somebody comes to say that your parents want us to pick you up and they were a stranger, they had to know the passcode. I think the same thing is great. And don't think that it doesn't happen. I just had a friend the other day say, you won't believe what happened to my mom. She got a call from somebody saying they were her grandchild, and she couldn't hear very well. They use all the tactics, right? She couldn't really hear the voice, but thought it was her grandson. And here it was a fraudster. And luckily, because what they will do, the fraudsters will say, they'll pretend like they're your grandchild and say, don't tell my mom or dad because I've gotten a speeding ticket, or I'm in jail, or I've been arrested for drugs, something awful. And so then you feel bad, like you don't want to rat out your grandchild. But it happens. I mean, it was just the other day that a friend of mine's mother got that exact same call. Luckily, she had the, wherewithal to call her daughter to say, hey, I just got this call. And, so again, if it sounds fishy, it likely is. So, and I think a great idea is to have a code word.
And it's not getting better. Artificial intelligence,
No.
it's just not getting better. It's actually getting worse. They're coming up with newer ways to fish, newer ways to get to our, our people in general.
So to that point,
with artificial intelligence, they're so smart that they use your grandchild's voice.
Yes.
They have access to manipulate and use the person's voice. For example, I just heard not too long ago that a mother of a daughter, the daughter called the mother saying, "Mom, you have to send money. I'm kidnapped." And the mother freaked out, and it wasn't her daughter, but it sounded just like her daughter. So artificial intelligence out there, we just have to be aware. So that passcode is really important.
Oh, for sure.
So now if you're about,
I mean, that leads to the next question. I want to know
about Medicare scams that are out there right now, because I mean, a lot of people, our whole world that we work with, we're all on Medicare. What are the Medicare scams that are out there right now that we need to be aware of?
So there are cases where somebody supposedly representing Medicare will come to your door to get you a better plan, to tell you that you haven't paid. No one from Medicare will ever come to your door, will ever visit you in person and require you to change your plan or have a better plan. or they will never ask for your personal information over the phone. So there are some scammers that will, call and they'll threaten that you're losing your Medicare benefit, that you need to pay right away, and then they just really want your Social Security number and your credit card information. They'll offer fake rebates or refunds. They'll offer you medical equipment or free testing. But what they're doing is they're just, again, trying to get your information, and then no equipment shows up and no tests are ever ordered. They have, there can be some mail sent out, some postcards that look like they're from Medicare offering you this great deal or better plan. Be very skeptical because they're really not, they're not available. And one of the, big scams out there, and it's not per se a scam because there are some benefits, but you'll see where on TV you hear about, I can get so much money back in my plan and I need to call this number to find out if I can get all these extra benefits. Very few people qualify for that benefit, and so it's not really truly something that most people have can take advantage of. So again, it's a way for this for people to operate and get your personal information. And there's the bait and switch where they'll tell you, hey, get this plan. It's going to give you this, this, and this. But what they end up doing is giving you a plan that has less coverage. So it's kind of the bait and switch.
And you also have to remember is that Medicare insurance people are not allowed to call you unless you have initiated the call to them legally.
Right.
So they are legally not allowed to call you, which is why when we have our health fairs here, you'll have a Medicare rep, but they will say, here's my card. If you're interested in talking to me later, please call.
Right.
So you have to remember that they will never, ever call you outright unless that happens to be your own agent and you requested a call from them, because they're legally not allowed to call you.
And Medicare does not have independent agents. They don't employ. The one thing I will say is 1-800-Medicare. If you have, if you're ever involved in any kind of fraudulent Medicare activity, just let them know, because again, that's how we can, by reporting it, we can hopefully get people to stop doing it.
And one of the things you can also do if you're kind of fearful of that, you never really think at our age, I don't have to worry about my credit, but you can put a freeze on your credit reports with Experian, Transamerica, I think is the other one, and I can't remember the last one, but if you put a freeze on your credit report, that helps to prevent someone stealing your identity. And then you just have to remember, if you were to go buy a car or you're going to get a loan for something, you have to call them, take the freeze off, let them know, and then as soon as you've processed whatever it is with your need for credit, then you can put the freeze back on, and that will help prevent identity theft.
And that's one way to protect yourself.
Yes.
Yes. The other thing, with AI that we were just talking about, don't carry on a long conversation either, because there could be a way that they're recording your voice to be used later on. So I just had an incident the other day where someone called me and said, "You keep calling me from, I keep getting called from this number," and I said, "No, I haven't been using my phone." And then I hung up and I thought, well, that was stupid, because the way AI works, they can take every syllable that I just said, somehow reconfigure it to then say something later on. So keep your conversation very brief, your answers very short, and hang up as soon as you possibly can, because you don't want to take any chances.
And also, when you take a phone call, stay away from saying the word yes.
I was just going to say that. If they go, oh, is this Nord Ashley? You don't say
Don't
yes.
say yes.
Yeah.
Who's
Why
asking?
are you asking? Yes.
Who's calling?
Right.
Because
right.
you're giving them authority to take additional information or money or whatever it is they're trying to scam. Never say yes. For example, is this Sylvia?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, who's asking? No, I don't think so. Who wants to know?
There's so much more. So
Yeah,
before we
this is
end this, we have
yeah.
a couple more minutes. Other ways that we can protect ourselves.
So I think in order to protect ourselves, we have to kind of understand some of the risks, right? So people who are susceptible to fraud are, often live by themselves. They don't have any oversight on their account. So, making sure that you're protecting yourself by allowing somebody else to have a second set of eyes, having that password, passcode, secret word, so that somebody is, overseeing, because things get very complicated very quickly. I think, talking to our loved ones about our fears, like if we do have financial worries, that we are bringing people in to help us so that we're not susceptible to taking that lottery, oh, you just won the lottery, give me your credit card so we can pay the taxes up front and we'll send you the check. Not going to happen. But letting our loved ones, or having some second pair of eyes and people in our loop, in our circle, kind of understanding what's going on. Never give your information away, ever, ever, ever. Be very careful. Keep your credit scores. Keep checking those. Subscribe to a service that can check your credit periodically for low fee, if not free. I know a lot of the credit cards will offer that service for free, where they'll monitor your credit for you and kind of notify you if there's been any changes. Having people have authority, so having a loved one have your power of attorney, so that if you are in a situation, that you have somebody who can act on your behalf. And again, just keeping yourself from becoming isolated, and that's when people tend to be more susceptible to, particularly the emotional fraudsters, right? The romantic and the the befriending,
And if you think you've been scammed, or you think something's happening, or you have been, don't be embarrassed to come and talk about it to someone and say, because you might be able to help somebody else. And then even if you were almost scammed, then you can feel better talking about it with somebody to say, wow, that was close, I almost did it.
And being able to file a report, that not only tell somebody, have them help you file a report, and then report it to the authorities so you can maybe get some of the funds back. If your bank or credit card or whatever has been jeopardized, they may have fraud protection.
And remember, if you ever hang up and you just gave your credit card and you're like, oh my God, I think I've just been scammed, call your credit card company immediately and stop payment.
Right.
And look at your statements.
Yes.
Not just once in a while. Look at your statements every day. If there's a phone number on there that you don't recognize, call your bank right away and cancel. That's what happened to me a couple weeks ago. My husband calls me. He's like, there's a phone number on our account. Did you put it on? Nope. Cancel the card.
No, even your bank account. Be sure to check those. There were some local banks that were hit by this big scam, and they had just $20 that they took out of just about everybody's account. Well, it didn't happen to our account, but it happened to my daughter, who's 20. And she was like, Mom, I don't remember spending this $20. I'm like, are you sure? Because, who knows what they're spending money on. And here it was not. So we called the bank and they said, oh yeah, we've been hit by this. So they put the $20 back in her account. They canceled her debit card. So just being, they'll take small enough monies out that fly sort of under the radar. And we all subscribe to things from time to time, and we kind of forget that we've subscribed, and so it can really kind of fall through the cracks.
And I've always told people, if you're hesitant to buy things online because of giving your credit card, I always say you have one credit card that you only use for online purchases that does not have a large credit line. So let's say you've been, golly, Amazon has such great deals, but I'm not buying anything on Amazon because I'm not giving my credit card number out. Well, establish a card that is just for Amazon, and that way you can watch that very closely. And if you're ever suspicious that something happened, you can just zero right in on that, close that account, and continue on without impacting the rest of your life.
Great advice, Sylvia. Okay, this wraps it up.
Okay.
We could go on for hours.
We could.
I know,
This is
I
a
know.
really good resource for everyone out there. But if anybody has questions moving forward, don't hesitate to call us. 513-923-5050 is the Colerain Senior Center number. And of course, 513-923-4466. But we will put Chris's and Molly's phone number and their organizations into our chat box if you have any questions for Molly or Chris.
Okay.
And of course, Sylvia as well, Visiting Angels.
Yes.
And we will see you the second Thursday of each month moving forward for homemade soup and mini lectures. Thank you again.
Thank you,
for
everybody.
joining.
Molly, great information.
Thank
Chris,
you.
thank you so much for getting Molly
Yes,
with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I finished it now. It stopped, froze.
Okay, did you end it?
Did you hit finish? You hit finish, right?
Oh, okay,
yeah.
good.
You're good.
Okay, good job, Paula.
Hey, she did it. Hey, Paula. Does anybody have any questions for Molly?
How do we stop these Medicare so-called people from calling you?
Yes.
You're calling for
Okay, I have a suggestion.
Ohio,
But do you have a
Lebanon, Texas.
Do you have a Cincinnati phone line? Are they calling on your landline? All right, then I can't help you. If it's a Cincinnati landline, you
Well,
can.
they're calling me like 5-6 times a day,
Oh.
and I keep hanging up.
Do you block the
And
numbers?
5 minutes later, they're calling me back again.
They're calling you on your cell phone?
Yeah.
I have
I
on
would-
my cell phone.
You can-
It's called RoboKiller. It's $2.99 a month, and it's an app that you put on your phone. But it was the best $3 I've spent.
Yeah.
I get no calls that come through. Calls will only come through to your phone if it's in your contact list. And then what it will do is, if it's a real person who is trying to call you, it will take a voicemail, and you can go back in the voicemail and read it and or call them back. And then otherwise it'll say it's a robocall, or it'll say spam. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm literally down to no calls coming through on my phone ever, but I get them.
It's out of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to stop it because, like I said, they're calling from different states now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So
No, I would try something like that.
We could help you download the app if you want to.
You have to have an
For $2.99.
account.
An
yeah.
account, Verizon. We could help you.
Verizon.
Yeah.
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 And then block the call. Yeah, and then you have to block the call every time it comes in, so it just kind of
So-
takes that call out of sequence.
Next step is to go to Verizon because they would have to bill you $2.99, and they'll help you download the app and stop the calls.
It's called RoboKiller.
RoboKiller. Sounds great.
Anybody else have any questions?
When you said Medicare will never call you, do you mean like I have Aetna Medicare Advantage? Will they ever initiate a call to me?
Oh, Humana calls me all the time.
Okay, they call, I'm saying they call you all the time, but they have some services I may not be getting.
No, no,
Just,
no, because you have a number on the back.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
I
no.
could talk. I would
No.
give you the answer, but she's the professional.
So they should not be calling you unless you have filed a claim or there's some initiation on your part to speak with them. They should not be calling
Well,
you.
I have a landline, so they have that number, and I
Okay.
just leave a message.
all right, so if you have a Cincinnati Bell landline
Yeah.
and you're getting calls coming through all the time, what you need to do is when you go home, you pick up the phone and you hit star 88, I believe it is, star 88. And when you hit star 88, it will prompt you through, do you want to block robocalls? You just have to follow the prompts and do what it says, because what will happen, and you'll want to warn your family, because then what will happen is every time anyone initiates a call to you, it will say, please press 8 if you are not a robocall. And that way then the call goes through, because I put that on my mother's phone, so every time I call her I have to hit 8.
Yeah.
And it works because I did it on my house, she did it on hers. I've told this to hundreds of seniors for the last 3 years once I discovered this, because this was like, oh my God, why haven't we learned about this
Right.
sooner?
Why
Why
don't
doesn't
they
Cincinnati Bell
I know,
tell
why
us
don't
this
they
stuff?
advertise that,
You
right?
know, star 88 and just follow the prompts and then get on your cell phone and call your house and see what happens so that you know it's working. Because it took me twice to get it working because I didn't do something right the first time. But it was amazing. It was like star 88. I'm
Star
going, oh my
88.
God, what a
But
godsend.
in the meantime, it sounds like that they're trying to scam you. So
Yeah.
call your insurance agent who you work with. Do you have a person? Well, there's a number on the back of your card. I mean, the only time, like Molly,
Yeah. Yeah.
what she said, they only if you initiate the call.
Right. So if
No.
She said, a Humana called me 2-3 times a month.
Nope, ignore.
Different things, you know.
And you can ask them not to call you. You can say, put me on your do not call list.
yes, do that, and yes.
Anytime you keep getting calls from somebody, if it's a real person on the other end, you need to tell them, please add me to your do not call list. I do not want any calls anymore.
Well, they want you to have a nurse come, or they want you to,
No.
and all this, you know.
No.
And get your family involved, your children and grandchildren. also? No. I've seen it happen so many times with scams with
Oh, yeah.
our members.
Right.
I helped a
Right.
member a couple months ago, brought a letter in. And I was like, nope, call your children. You're getting scammed right now.
I got an email that said that you need to pay this bill by such and such a date or we're going to take you to court. And I looked at that and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And it was very, very threatening. It was actually an email. It was very, very, very threatening. And I even showed, I was actually like, oh my God. I actually gave it to my husband and I go, what do you think about this? Because they were threatening all kinds of stuff. I had no idea what it was about, but it was threatening enough that I normally don't get spoofed by anything, but this was like, oh, I kind of like, oh, I don't like this at all. And my husband goes, oh, that's garbage, just delete it. Well, I did delete it and it never ever came back and nothing happened what they threatened me with in that email.
Oh my gosh.
So, but I mean, it scared me a little bit because it was very, very threatening.
Right.
If you guys have questions, come up to any of us.
And I just want to say, people are victims of fraud, particularly older people, are not because they're not savvy or they don't understand what's going on. It's because you have good credit and you have the resources that people want. So just keep that in mind, that if something does happen, it is because you're a target for a reason, not because you're not capable or able.
Yeah.
Because we're all nice and loving and we're caring and we're polite.
Right?
We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
No, and we're very diligent about paying our bills.
Yes.
And, they prey on that sense of duty and obligation, too.
And Chris brought some brochures, Senior Advisor, if you guys have any questions or, for Chris. It's right over here.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions? Thank you all for being so attentive today.
I know. Thank you so much.
2 weeks ago, my card, I went shopping. And I didn't even tell you this. So before Twinsburg, we went Twinsburg shopping 2 Saturdays ago. Yeah. And my husband calls me. He's in Vegas. Did you put this number on our account? And I'm like, I didn't even recognize it. And my work number. See, I'm like, why would I put my work number? I was like, no. He says, when you have time, go to Fifth Third and cancel the card. Don't call and go. Change your PIN number is what he said.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do it.
Uh-oh.
So my card got behind.
No.
They started off at Walgreens and then they went to Mixed-Up. But the thing is, I had my card.
It doesn't matter.
So what they do is they skimmed it.
Well, here's what happened. So they went to 2 places. And then after that, they must have, when I went to Fifth Third, Monday, this was Saturday, I went shopping, my card got declined. I'm like, there's no way. Got declined, right? Because I only keep a limited amount on it. Right. I'm a twin, so we're twins. So I go to Fifth Third, he said, yeah, you did get declined. He said somebody, supposedly they were trying my PIN number multiple times, and then he was showing me like some other stuff. Yeah. So what I did, he said, what he advises, here's my debit card, because I could use this as a credit card, but I don't.
Yeah.
So I ended up opening up a credit card. He said, open up a credit card, it's harder to compromise, as much as I didn't want to.
You don't want your debit card because your debit card is the one that they can take all your cash out, like
That's the
overnight.
one that I only put a limited amount, because it's the third time my
credit
debit
card
card
and
got
pay
compromised.
Yeah.
And I'm really careful. Like, that's how good artificial intelligence is.
Yeah.
Now they're mimicking our voices.
I know.
And it won't
I
be
mean, a
long
mom
before
of
they
a young daughter freaked out, called the police and everything, because her daughter was kidnapped. But it was the voice.
Yeah.
Her daughter was up in her bedroom. Yeah. Oh.
Yesterday, we had a bunch of us attended a workshop.
Yeah, how was that yesterday?
Yeah, it was excellent. So look, she's all over the media. They've actually said of course, I didn't bring my paper. There is a phone number.
How come you weren't there at the workshop?
say I have that scheduled somewhere for something, but my brain is like, I know I do because I wanted to go to it because I wanted to see the content because I know maybe APA has it scheduled. I've got too many things.
Yeah. It's really worth it. And like I said, it's all over the internet.
For something.
We had over 100 calls.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, she's wonderful. She's wonderful.
Well, it's great to have that, visibility because people aren't necessarily aware of, what the latest scams are, or what to do about it if they are,
Well, I almost got scammed because I was calling